Hi, my name's Ruth. Thank you for tuning into this week's video where I want to talk all about psychedelic experiences, transcendental experiences, crossing to another dimension, going through a portal, having a psychedelic experience. So there are different ways to have psychedelic experiences. So one of the ways that we first and foremost think of is exactly the same as I thought of, which was through drugs or substances. And that could be anything from mushrooms or LSD acid to ayahuasca or peyote or all these different like frog poisons, and there are many different tools that people have used for generations and generations to have these kind of transcendental psychedelic experiences. And I have experienced using substances to help with that, which is something that I've kind of didn't know whether I wanted to talk about in a video, but I've decided to. And also as well, my psychedelic experiences that I didn't really realise were psychedelic experiences until I used the substance, and then realised that I'd actually had very similar, almost identical experiences without substances, which I want to talk a little bit more into because it's becoming very like on vogue and trendy to go on an ayahuasca retreat or take mushrooms. And I think that it's not necessarily right for everyone. You have to really trust your own intuition on this, because I had a lot of resistance to drugs in general. And so just to talk into that a little bit, like there were issues when I was growing up with like drugs in my wider circle, and I really had a very negative idea of what the whole experience of taking drugs was. So I'd always shied away from it, and I'd always had like a lot of anger and resistance come up anytime I heard about people taking ayahuasca and things like that. So it was interesting that it was like a good few years later, after this all came into my consciousness about psychedelics, that I actually decided that I wanted to do it. So that was part of my process of really feeling a lot of resistance and then becoming curious about why I had that resistance to the substances, and then easing into the idea that maybe I would like to experience it, and speaking to other people that had experienced it and thinking about what the best way was for me personally. So I have taken mushrooms, and I found that to be something that was an incredible release for me personally, and it's just got me thinking about it because I've recently watched Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop Labs, which is on Netflix, and there is a whole episode which I'll link to below, which is all about some of the Goop staff. Whatever we think about Goop, there's a whole episode on the Goop staff going to do mushrooms together in a ceremonial way. And there's some really valuable information in that episode for anyone that is thinking about using psychedelics. So first off, to say that it's very much, for me personally, I wanted the first time particularly that I did it, I wanted it to be ceremonial. I wanted it to be in a safe space with people that were masters of this, and it was very sacred. So that was my experience of doing it. And in the Goop show, the doctor that was on from MAPS, which is an institute in America that is doing a lot of research into psychedelic drugs for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and also as well anxiety and depression. So he said that there are three key things which I would really agree with, is the idea of set, so the people that you are choosing to do this with, the setting, so where you are, what the environment's like, what the room's like, what the space is like, and also the dosage. So those being like the magic three things to consider. So not trying to be the big guy or the tough girl, and kind of like ego comes in and you push yourself to take a huge dose if that's not right for you. So really following your own intuition and finding the best setting that's going to support you to do that, because people do have bad experiences, From what I understand, a lot of the stuff about bad experiences comes from those three things: setting, and dosage not being right for the person. And so I got all of those things right. It was the right timing for me, and I had an incredible experience on the mushrooms. So it was about, I think, maybe like 4 or 5 hours of really diving deep, and having done that in a ceremonial way was incredible. And I felt like it was really a chance for me to ask. So I believe personally that we are very much rooted and connected to nature. So we're connected to trees, we're connected to the mushroom networks where these substances come from originally. And there's great wisdom that lies within the elementals and within the earth, which is transmitting into us and giving us these psychedelic experiences when we take substances such as mushrooms. And so I was able to really ask the mother, that's what I like to say, is Mother Earth, the mother, what I wanted, like what I needed help with, and could she support me in finding out some answers to these questions whilst on the mushrooms. And I was lucky enough to have some really incredibly fun and a lot of laughter. So really beautiful experiences, and also as well some really profound, deep things that I needed to know. And it was very much a matter of, anything like this is very hard to describe, and it's only my experience. Everyone experiences different, but it was really kind of her helping me to tune into my own intuition and be like, this is going on, this is going on, this is where you need to be, that's where you need to be, this is fun, but this is a distraction, and really just giving me a lot of clarity on those things, as well as a lot of giggles and a lot of feeling great in my body and fun during the experience. So that was my personal experience, was very much connecting with the mother, that mother energy of the earth and our intuition inside. And I just want to say that, like I say, I've had that experience whilst using a substance to support me in the right setting with the right people at the right dosage. But when I've reflected back on the experience of taking the psychedelic substance, I realised that I've had the same connection with source, the same deep, profound connection with my own mother and the wider universe through breath work and through other practices that do not involve substances. So if you're somebody that has a past which is, there's addiction there's a fear of drugs, there's just a willingness not to use substances or outside external forces to reach these higher levels of consciousness and experience, then there are other ways to do it. So I just want to share with you how I found that through other experiences. So there are 2 ways and 2 experiences that I've had, which were the same feeling and aura of the psychedelic experience, which is the only way I can describe it. And the first time was when I had something called a Watsu treatment. Watsu is basically shiatsu in water, and it's where you're held by a practitioner and they take you around in water, and kind of, it's a bit hypnotic, the whole experience. It involves letting go, it involves trusting, very similar to taking the psychedelic substances. And what I found during that experience, which, just to know, I did with a very experienced practitioner who can take you under the water for longer and longer periods of time. So you're not just, you're submerging your whole body, your face, and you have to trust them that they're basically not going to drown you. And so I had that treatment in Bali, and I will put links to that below. During that treatment, especially towards the end, once I had fully surrendered and I was under the water for longer and longer periods of time, which involves breath restriction, you can't, we all know we can't breathe underwater. So through that experience, I had the same experience that I later had with the psychedelic substance, which was the connection with the mother. and it's very hard to describe, but it was a full out of body. I'm no longer in a human form. I am the universal energy. I'm part of everything. I'm seeing colours, I'm seeing shapes, I'm seeing animals, and it's an incredible experience. And I got to that not for as long, obviously, as the substance experience, but I still had that experience, which still lives within me, and I can still go back to that place, which is a really beautiful thing that was purely achieved by putting trust in a really experienced practitioner. Again, that thing of setting, and that was purely just using movement and breath to get into that sort of higher consciousness and that psychedelic experience that I felt like I'd had when I used the substance and used the mushrooms. And I just want to say as well that the other time that I've experienced that, which again, no substances used, was again through breath. So I really think there's something in the breath having stuff to do with this. So like at the moment, the Wim Hof method and the idea of water immersion and breathing, being able to give you these profound experiences, there is definitely something in that from my own personal experience. Because the second time, the breath work that I did to reach this higher state was through kundalini yoga, which is a specific type of yoga which focuses on the chakras and the kundalini energy, which is like a serpent, which we can sometimes have blockages. And the idea with kundalini is it's about those chakras and awakening this kundalini energy in the body. And as part of that practice, there is a lot of breath work. So there is a lot of different breathing techniques that you do for long periods of time. And I went on a workshop which was in Liverpool, and I fully had a incredibly out of body experience just from doing breath work. So we did a lot of intense breath work during that day, and I really felt like again I reached an altered state through the control of the breath, through breathing techniques. It wasn't quite as strong as the Watsu in water or the using the substance, but it was still an incredible experience. So there are other ways to access this if you're someone that's really afraid or not keen on using substances. Then you can definitely do it through other practices. Like I say, kundalini yoga, Watsu treatment did it for me. And it's really, I think, something not to bow to peer pressure to do this. If you want to use some sort of substance to support you in that experience, then making sure you're not doing it from ego just to look cool or because someone else is pressuring you into doing it. It's got to be on your own terms, which is something that it took me, like I say, a few years before I was fully ready to be able to do that with the right people in the right place. So I hope this has helped you. Please comment. I feel very vulnerable sharing this because it's personal. So let me know your experiences, and I will see you next week for another video. Thanks guys. Bye.